All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I've seen some people introducing themselves in the chat window, which is wonderful to see, especially how many parts of the English-speaking world are represented here tonight. So thank you all so much for joining us for our webinar, Organizing in Your Community. We are going to have a wonderful program, and we'll be taking questions at the end. And in the meantime, please feel free, if you go on your screen, you can see a Q&A button, or you can type questions in the chat window, and we'll be pulling some out to answer at the end. My name is Marissa Vertrees. I'm the campaigns manager for English-speaking countries for the Global Catholic Climate Movement. Very excited to be here tonight with this webinar to keep up some of the momentum that we built with all of the wonderful events we saw around the world with Mercy to Earth Weekend, as well as the People's Climate March. So we wanted to make sure that we could take that energy and take it back home and organize for some really wonderful things coming up over the year. And to start with, I just wanted to start with an opening prayer. So if we could prepare ourselves, Father, Son, and Spirit, amen. God of the universe, we thank you for your many good gifts, for the beauty of creation and its rich and varied fruits, for clean water and fresh air, for food and shelter, animals and plants. Forgive us the times we have taken the earth's resources for granted and wasted what you have given us. Transform our hearts and minds so that we would learn to care and share, to touch the earth with gentleness and love, respecting all living things. We pray for all those who suffer as a result of our waste, greed, and indifference, and we pray that the day would come when everyone has enough food and clean water. Help us respect the rights of all people and all species, and help us willingly to share your gifts today and always. Amen. Right, thank you. So for the agenda, we're going to start with a discussion of our Laudato Si Animators program. And this is something for those of you who haven't done the program and are looking for how you can really get more resources to spread Laudato Si in your community after some of the events of the last month. This will hopefully be a way to do that. Christina Liano, our Associate Director for the Global Catholic Climate Movement, will be doing that talk. Jackie Ramond from Catholic Earth Care Australia, as the National Director of Catholic Earth Care Australia, will be leading us with a discussion of Season of Creation and talking about that, a wonderful liturgical moment that we're hoping is celebrated in many churches during the month of September. Jackie is the National Director of Catholic Earth Care Australia, which is the ecological arm of the Catholic Church in Australia. She's been a professor and an activist, and previously worked as the coordinator of the Northern Australia Environment Alliance, as well as taking part in many activist movements there. She's also one of the founding steering committee members of the Global Catholic Climate Movement, so we're very happy to have her here tonight. And then we're going to have a little talk from two people who have started GCCM chapters in their own community. Fran Ludwig from the Boston Catholic Climate Movement and Nancy Lawrence from the New York Catholic Climate Movement. Fran was a science teacher for 50 years. Her most famous student is probably Bill McKibben, who she taught 8th grade science to. So we're all very grateful that she was able to inspire him. She still engages in nature walks now and is active in 350 Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light, and climate justice at Boston College. So we're also grateful that amidst all of that, she's found time to organize the Boston Catholic Climate Movement as well. So she'll be able to talk about how you can all organize in your own communities, and hopefully have some tips on how to do it if you're still a busy person and you can fit it in. Nancy Lawrence has also been an educator and an activist for many years. She lived in Guatemala, working in community development with the rural communities for many years. She's also worked with the Garment Workers Union in New York City, working on immigrant rights issues as well as labor issues. She's currently retired from working for money, but is still working on many different fronts and active with a Jesuit parish in mid-Manhattan. So I want to thank all of them for joining us here today. So with that, as I mentioned, you can type questions into the Q&A or into the chat box. And Christina will start with a discussion of the Laudato Si Animators program.
Great. So thanks, Marissa. And hello, everybody. We're so excited that you're joining this conversation on how to organize in our communities. And we're giving you a sneak peek. This is the first time that we're publicly announcing that we're going to be doing our second round of the Laudato Si Animators program. So I saw through the chat box that several of you are Laudato Si animators. So yay, thanks for being a part of the program and thanks for joining us again. So for those of you who might not know, the Laudato Si Animators program is a training and formation program for individuals who want to bring Laudato Si to life in their communities. We know that so many of us were inspired by the Pope's message, by the Pope's encyclical about Laudato Si, but we're not quite sure exactly what do we do with it. And so the Laudato Si Animators is a program to help give you more education about the encyclical, to give you some formation on how to integrate it into your life, and then to give you also some training to some concrete skills so that you can bring it to their communities, as well as support through GCCM and through each other. So we're excited that we're going to start, the next round is actually going to start next month in the middle of June, and we're going to expand it to include 3 trainings. That's going to follow the See, Judge, Act model, and it's going to also include a capstone project where all of the animators will be inspired to host some kind of project during Season of Creation, which Jackie will share a little bit more about. So we really encourage you, if you haven't already done the first round of the Laudato Si Animator program, which we did last year, to consider applying and joining next month. We're going to be bringing in some experts who can talk about climate change, who can talk about Laudato Si, and who can give you some great skills to bring it back to your community. As well as, as you can see from this chat box, we have people from all around the globe. So it's a great way to connect and learn from people from different continents. And one thing we're going to try to do is encourage, so any animators who are currently on the call, we're going to encourage current animators to serve as resource people and maybe as mentors for incoming animators, so that we're really building a network of support to encourage our wider church to incorporate and to take on this ministry of care for creation. So we're going to be sending out an email next week with all of the details. Again, it's going to start mid-June, and it will include the 3 training webinars and then ongoing discussions with other animators on how to develop projects in your community. So thank you, Monica, for your pitch in the chat box that you highly recommend it. So we got a lot of good feedback from the first round. So we know we're going to have an even better round coming up. So thank you. Yeah, so you can see here what we have we're going to have 2 English language times available because we know we're spanning the whole world. We'll have to do something for folks kind of in the Asia Pacific islands, and then something in that can meet North America and Europe and in the continent of Africa. Again, 3 weeks of different topics on climate change, the challenges on Laudato Si, and then skill building, and then a capstone project. So please apply, and if you have already done the Animator program, we also have something in store for you, so don't worry. We're thinking about you too. And just tell your friends about it. It's going to be a great way to really put our faith into action and bring Laudato Si to life. Back to you, Marissa.
Great. Thank you so much for that wonderful description of Laudato Si animators, and I echo the thanks for everybody who's sharing what they did with it in the chat box. So if there's any questions about that, please ask that at the end, and we'll be able to answer that. In the meantime, I'd like to turn it over to Jackie to talk about the season of creation.
Thanks so much, Marisa. And hi, everyone. I don't know if I'm on your screen yet, but it's Jackie Ramond here from Sydney in Australia. I want to say a special hello to my friends in Australia and all around the world. And a thanks to GCCM for the invitation to be part of this webinar today, particularly highlighting what has been over a decade of work focusing on a season of creation. It actually stems back to 2004 and even beyond that in terms of the thinking and the development of it, when a wonderful Lutheran professor, academic, but also a reverend, Professor Norman Habel, was inspired to develop a season of creation spanning from the 1st of September till the 4th of October, so that every Sunday at the Christian liturgical key moment of gathering, there would be a focus on the key issues that face our current reality on earth. So he developed a special liturgical calendar called A Season of Creation, and then began, of course, to share it with people all around the world. In the Uniting Church, in the Catholic Church, it began in the Philippines, and it spread, of course, to the US and Europe. And it's now really exciting that as the Global Catholic Climate Movement champions this, we start to look at ways that we can embed this more deeply in our Catholic liturgical calendar permanently is our focus. We have this as a strategic goal, by the way, over the next few years to achieve that. And in the meantime, we're joining with our ecumenical brothers and sisters to promote and provide resources so that we can all participate in this wonderful season of creation. So it begins on the 1st of September, and as you would know, it is now named since 2015 by Pope Francis as the World Day of Prayer for Creation. And we're joining with our ecumenical brothers and sisters on that particular day to reach out with our hearts, our minds, and our whole beings to universally pray for planet Earth and for the universe. This was begun by the Orthodox Church back in 1989. So we are joining somewhat late on the scene, but certainly we bring great enthusiasm and a gusto to participate. So I'd encourage you to mark that time in a way that's appropriate for you in your local context and churches. And I will ask you to consider how you can contribute to a season of creation in just a moment. But firstly, I did ask for the website of that we've launched through the Global Catholic Climate Movement for a Season of Creation to be shared. And I noticed that's been on the screen while I've been talking. Thank you, Marisa, for showing that. So you can see that the Global Catholic Climate Movement has put together a neat website page where you can access key messages and an understanding for what this period of time is about, this deep honouring of our earth, and that we make it prominent just like our wonderful seasons of Lent and Advent. So there's a little bit of information about how it started, and I think that's important to understand the deep ecumenical flavour of this story and the deep roots that are in our Christian tradition. And then it moves on to 2017 with an invitation to collaborate with a variety of partners who are working, of course, on a season of creation with ourselves. The World Council of Churches became involved with this a decade ago as well. So there's been great impetus for the Christian traditions to celebrate a season of creation. So please feel free to access the Season of Creation webpage and learn more about the season of creation there for yourself, and share that with your community, please. And then I just wanted to wrap up by saying that there's a working group that's part of the Global Catholic Climate Movement, particularly focusing on our preparations for a season of creation. And today I'd like to invite you to consider one of three activities, or perhaps all of them you might like to take up. The first is hosting a prayer service, and this could be something that is ecumenical, of course, as well. That would be ideal. But hosting a prayer service during a season of creation that brings a focus to it. You'll notice with the various resources that have been developed over the last decades that sometimes it might be that particular weekend focuses on oceans, or focuses on our atmosphere, or focuses on freshwater, or any other dimension of the earth. So you might like to draw on those liturgical resources when you host a prayer service in your local community. The second invitation is to consider organising some sort of symbolic action to highlight the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. And that could be somewhere in a public setting. It certainly could be outside with creation, or it could be inside your church environment. So organising a symbolic action that holds up, that lifts up creation at this time between the 1st of September and the 4th of October would be fantastic. And recognising that, of course, the closing date for a season of creation, the 4th of October, is St. Francis of Assisi's feast day. And traditionally, this is when communities are invited to bring animals to be blessed. And this may be something you would like to consider as well, as part of the deep symbolism of deep interconnectedness with one another. The third invitation that you might like to consider is to organise a prayer service. So this is not necessarily hosting it, but it's organising it. And I'm pleased to share with you that GCCM is preparing a template for a prayer service that we'll be sharing on the web pages that you see that connect with the season of creation. So the first action was to host a prayer service. The second one is to have a symbolic action that highlights the cry of the earth and the poor. And the third one is to consider organising a prayer service. Again, this could be indoors or outdoors. So they're just a few ideas that I wanted to share with you this morning. It really is an exciting high point in our liturgical year. And as we move forward to make this hopefully a permanent and central liturgical feast in our church, we'd invite you to celebrate with your communities and build the momentum so that the grassroots activity happening is noticed by your communities, but also by the wider church communities. And hopefully that inspires our leaders and Pope Francis to make this a liturgical moment in our calendar as well. Thanks very much. Take care. Back to you, Marisa.
Thank you so much for that. I think this is really a beautiful idea and a wonderful way to celebrate creation within our own churches. So I hope you all will have time to look at that website more. The website address is seasonofcreation.org, which I put in the chat box as well. And hopefully you all could see that at the bottom, in addition to the templates that GCCM will be developing, there's a lot of information for outreach materials, planning an event, and Laudato Si prayers in particular on the site already that I hope you can review. So now I want to turn it over to Fran and then Nancy to talk about how to organize yourselves so that you can take on some of these major events. So I really appreciate them being here with us. These are both people who have started chapters from the grassroots. So with not a ton of support from GCCM on our own, but have been able to really take take some of the materials and run with it and organize their local communities, and we're really grateful to them. So I'll turn it over to Fran to begin, and then Nancy. Thank you.
Hi. I'm not sure you can see me yet, but can you hear me? Yes? Okay. So, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm so happy to see people from all over the world involved in this very important work. I'm going to try to get my whoops, I need to do this and do this and do this. Okay, I think we're to go. We are very excited to celebrate our first birthday of the Boston Catholic Climate Movement. I actually started trying to work with other parishes in the Boston area a few years ago. Our parish in Lexington, Massachusetts has been active in creation care for probably about 6 or 8 years. We go back to The Inconvenient Truth. I think that was our first presentation, the video by Al Gore. So we've had some experience in trying to work within our parish. Our individual parish green teams started with just a few people, and we still have maybe 10 people, but it seems that that's really enough. So don't worry about having to have a very large group to have a fair amount of influence. I was very happy to find out about the Global Catholic Climate Movement, and very happy to meet Tomas and Sua and Cristina Liano, because they've been very helpful in helping us to get started in Boston. They actually are headquartered in Boston, so that makes it easier for me. One of the things that really gathered people together was a presentation by Father Sean McDonough, who came to the United States from Ireland to do sort of a tour. He was issuing his book, Laudato Si, a commentary, and for good reason, because he actually was one of the prime advisors to the committee that put together Laudato Si. He was on that committee, and his specialty was on the scientific part of it, so that really was of interest to me. At that particular presentation, he did it at Boston College and our parish and a couple of other places. At each point, we tried to collect signatures of people who were interested in forming a Boston Catholic climate movement. So as a result of that, and also Christina actually was present at the Archdiocese of Boston's Justice Convocation, and she collected signatures there as well of people who were interested. Tomas is on the left of that wonderful Pope Francis. I'm on the right, and this is a picture from this year's convocation. Notice on the right there's a trifold poster board that has information, and I think it's important in trying to get people interested to sort of catch their imagination, be able to talk with them about concerns that they have within their own parishes. We put out a newsletter maybe 1 or 2 times a month, depending on what's happening. And that's been a really effective tool for letting people know what's happening in the greater community, tips for doing things in your own parishes. And in particular, in the Boston area, we're looking for opportunities for people to influence their legislators. We know how important that is now. So this has been an important tool, and at one point I evaluated it. I asked people to complete a short survey, and really those tips for working within a parish seem to be the ones that were most important. So as a result, Greening Your Parish gathering, and we offered an opportunity for people from many different parishes to come together and to get information, in this case, It was a keynote address that had to do with Laudato Si, and sort of practical ways that your parish can address some of the challenges that the Pope has issued, that we know are very important both for the earth and for the poor and for all of us and our children. So the last time we did this was in March, and at that one we had a panel from 4 parishes that were organizing creation care committee. So we know we've been successful because we have each time we have more and more parishes who actually have creation care committees, green teams, we're calling them. Here's our first Greening Your Parish event. Again, you can see that cardboard Pope. We know that he's with us in spirit, but it really does help to be reminded that he is behind us 100%. It's very interesting to hear what people in different parishes are doing. And it is inspirational for us in trying to plan things for our own parish. Now, the last time we had an event, like I said, was in March, but we didn't hand out, first time around we did hand out a resource list. But now that list has gotten so long, and it's really internet-based mostly. So what we've done is put it online on Google Docs. If you're not familiar with that, that's a really good resource for posting information. So I've updated it as of yesterday. And if you scroll down on your chat column, I put a short internet address. You can sort of click on it and get that right away. But I know Marissa's going to send it to you tomorrow too. So if you can wait till tomorrow, you'll get it. But it has information on a lot of resources that we've in parishes to come up with activities, with prayers, etc. And I'm just going to take a little diversion because this is an example of something that we had at one of our Greening Your Parish events that people found very helpful. The Faith and Environment group is the group that we started at Sacred Heart and St. Bridget parishes in Lexington. Like I said, around 8 years ago or so. It gives you an idea what resources we've used and what activity we've done. So the Catholic Climate Covenant organization has helpful to us. This is a group of the U.S. Catholic Bishops Council that holds some cachet in certain fronts. So, and they do have excellent materials that are all online. And is that the impact of climate change falls heaviest on the poor, and our faith invites us to tread lightly and act boldly. They really feature excellent visuals. So this is part of a poster that you could put in your bulletin board in your parish. At our parish, we have organized, so to speak, where the theme has to do with creation. And at these masses, we have music that is related to the natural world and sort of praying for and about creation and with creation. We involve the kids in the procession. Here's a boy with an earth ball. You can see, I think, maybe, I'm not sure, I can't move this up, but here's a picture of our sanctuary, and right where Marissa is sitting there, probably in your image, the earth ball is right up there on the altar. So we encourage our presiders to have a homily on some aspect of creation. Now that's a little sticky because sometimes the Sunday readings are not very conducive to doing that, but the Catholic Climate Covenant organization has a resource where they have people who look at all the Sunday readings, pull out things from Laudato Si and match them up and come up with some guidelines for homilies. And I have to say, our pastor has been very receptive to this. We've worked with him pretty closely, and I think that's essential if you're working in a parish, to have a group of people approach the pastor and ask if you can help him to promote more responsibility for creation and integrate that into the culture of your parish. So we've tried to do that. Sometimes, as I said, the readings don't go along with any kind of a creation theme. So in this case, we had a prayer service right after Mass that was quite successful. This was for the canonization of Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, who was the first Native American saint. And we're lucky to have two young Lakota girls who are in our, and they did a smudging ceremony right outside the church after Mass. Very effective. We sometimes invite people to come to hospitality right after Mass, and there's often something to sign, a letter to sign or a petition. This is people signing the GCCM petition for the Paris climate meeting, which was successful, partly because of these petitions, I really believe. So, so it really does sort of bring the world together. There was a mention of the blessing of the animals, which we did. This is my dog that the pastor has. He had treats in his pocket there, so she was very interested. We also were planting milkweed for monarchs, and the picture on the right. Mass. This would be something that you could also do with kids that would be very effective. We try to include in our bulletin prayers in the bulletin, but also, as I mentioned, prayers of the faithful. We really want to integrate concern for creation and for the people who are suffering from pollution, also all living things, really, as part of what we do as a parish. We also have and we find that those are most effective if you do them right after Mass while people are still there. Trying to get people to come back at night or something like that is not quite as effective. And there's plenty of films and videos that are wonderful discussion starters. Another is called Lent 4.5, and I'm going to let you read about that online as you click on the website for this this group. We use it especially during Lent, and it was a 7-week program. It was really excellent suggestions. We also looked at what we do as a parish. First thing we did, I think, as we organized many years ago, was to get recycle buckets for all of our parish events. And now we've also tried to use reusable cups and just wash them into it. We did a little research, see which used the least energy, and this seems to be the one, as long as you use it all the time. We also try to involve our youth, and I'm not sure you can see it, but this is part of a food fast program from Catholic Relief Services. It's really excellent, and it incorporates some issues of climate change as well. Another resource that we use is Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light. This is an interfaith organization, obviously, and they offer wonderful resources. In our case, it's actually doing energy audits for houses of worship, but we also try to do things on, I say we because I'm on the board for that too, but we try to educate people in terms of the connection between climate change and their moral values, and also do advocacy at our Boston State House. They are wonderful. Oh, here's just a little slide of our energy audit. We actually had some members of our green group that crawled up into the attic there and took some pictures. And our parish saves $30,000 a year, so that may be an important way to get into your parish council to try to advocate for creation care. The National Interfaith Power and Light also offers some wonderful programs. Here's one on cool congregations, cool harvest, food, everybody eats food. The picture that you see is our interfaith garden in Lexington. Many of our faith congregations participate. The food all gets given to a food pantry. So that works very well. And then we mentioned advocacy. Lexington is very historic, so we try to make that a good visual. When you're doing advocacy, you really want to get the information out to the newspapers and so on, so that you get your story out, so that we make it a point to do that. And of course, the People's Climate March. That was a wonderful experience. You can see all the people gathered from the Capitol on the upper left, and they were all the way down to the White House. In the picture to the right, there was a prayer service that was wonderful. Marissa was right in the front row for that. In the middle with the green shirt is who is one of the co-founders of the Global Catholic Climate Movement. In the lower left, myself and Pete Dunbeck, who has been a driving force in our chapter. More on Pete in a minute, but it's very steering committee, which we just formed to sort of advise the group on, what's next, etc. One of our other steering committee members on the right, to the left of the Pope, is at the Boston Climate. So again, getting the word out, getting signatures of people who are interested. So here's our latest project. There are 2 parish guides that are really excellent. And this one is from the Archdiocese of Atlanta. While I was at the Climate March, I met the woman who wrote this. She's now she's a retired person who worked at the University of Georgia, and she's very willing to give us her documents. So we're going to try to adapt this parish guide for the Archdiocese of Boston. We're working on developing a relationship with them. This is another excellent source, an eco-parish guide, and this is from the Global Catholic Climate Movement as well. So we're looking into doing that. And then I just want to close by reading this statement. I really like to hear this because in this day and age, it's a heavy burden sometimes to hear what's happening to creation, and especially in the U.S., what's happening as a result of the edicts from Washington. So it's nice to know that somebody out there, cares about what we're doing. And here's a quote from Pope Francis to close. I want to recognize, encourage, and thank all those striving in countless ways to guarantee protection of the home which we share. And I join with Francis in thanking you much. So over to you, Marissa.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to turn it right over to Nancy.
Okay.
All right, we can hear.
Marissa, what do I do to? Okay. So that was a wonderful presentation. You. What you've been able to do. We started our group, I would say 2 years ago. Organized by Franciscan Action Network, and some of them were
Oh, did we just lose Nancy? Okay. So I am sorry about that. So in the meantime, I guess I will I'll open it up if people have questions that they want to. Oh, good. Nancy, are you back? Let's give her a minute. But if people do have questions, please add them in the chat box. While we're waiting, Fran, one question did pop up, which is, where did you get that life-sized cutout of Pope Francis? Oh, we
the wonders
and
the wonders
being able to be.
Hold on. Nancy, we can hear, but not clearly. Nancy, we can hear you, but not very clearly, and we can't see you. Okay. Yeah, I apologize for the technical difficulties, but yeah, Fran, back to you and where you got that wonderful cutout.
Okay, so you asked about the Pope and the wonders of the internet. I looked all over the internet for a good Pope. I wanted one who was smiling, and if people are really interested, I can go back and find out. But it was from Amazon.
All right, great. All right, Nancy, we'll try again.
Okay.
Okay.
Should I start?
Yeah.
Should I start over? All right, I'll start from the beginning. We had our chapter met and got together after the People's Climate March that happened here in New York City in 2004. And just to give you an idea of how big that climate march was, just the interfaith contingent of that march was 20,000 people. And we had a lot of conference calls leading up to it, which brought some of us together to get to know one another. And we also had certain calls that were just for Catholics that were coordinated by the Franciscan Action Network. And it was the Franciscan Action Network, Patrick Carolyn specifically, who said after the march, let's continue to meet. Let's not just let it go with a march. And so that kind of prepared us to be ready for the release of Laudato Si. And when it was released, some of us were ready to do something and thought it was very important to do something in the parishes to bring Laudato Si to the parishes. So our little group of 5 women at that time decided to write little paragraphs to put in the Sunday bulletins of any parish that would want to put them in. And with each paragraph, which contained a very specific idea that was contained in Laudato Si, we also had an action suggestion. Go to this video and learn more about Laudato Si was a big suggestion. Giving people resources to learn more about it. And those paragraphs were in English, Spanish, and French. And they eventually ended up on the GCCM website. And we knew that there was somebody in Africa that was posting them, and we knew that there was somebody in Canada that was using them in their bulletins. So it was not just here in New York City and the parishes that we outreach to. The next step was finding out about GCCM, that it existed, and participating in the petition campaign. And that was leading up to the Paris summit. And we started promoting the petition in the entrance to churches by tabling wherever we could, and you know, really promoted the idea that it was a petition that was blessed by Pope Francis. And so we got a lot of people signing up in the parishes, and then when the Pope came here, that just gave an extra boost to the whole idea of petitioning. So we could go to all of these captive audiences of people waiting in Central Park, for example, for the Pope to come through and collect signatures there. And I've never participated in such in a petition campaign where it was so easy to get signatures. Would you like to sign a petition that is, you know, blessed by the Pope? Sure, sure. And I noticed that Sister Bing from the Philippines is actually on this webinar, and she came down from Vermont and helped us collect signatures on that petition. So it's nice to know that she's here. Yes, so then the Pope came to New York, and we organized an interfaith rally and prayer vigil. It was a combination of the two things. And So some of us were involved, some of that coordinating team of 5 people were involved in the planning of that vigil. And there was, combined with that, there was an overnight vigil in a church where each faith group took a certain hour in which they were going to come to the church. It was a Catholic church, where each faith group came and presented something from their faith that related to the environment. It ended up being a beautiful kind of event. So we were still, at that point, just 5 of us that were doing this work. But we had the building blocks, I think, to create an organization. And that's when we approached GCCM to see if we could be a chapter. And, you know, by then we knew each other, and each one of us, of the 5 women that were on this team, had their own network. Like Fran, I had been very active in my parish since the release of An Inconvenient Truth, which, Fran, that was 10 years ago, actually. And we had worked on environmental issues in my parish ever since. We had done carbon fasts during Lent. We had a campaign in my parish to stop using bottled water, plastic bottled water. We called it Take Back the Tap, which was from Food and Water Watch. We actually ordered more sustainable bottles for people to buy that had the logo of our parish on it, with the logo of Take Back the Tap as well. So the thing that I would say is we had a lot of signatures of people who seemed to be interested in the issue of global warming / climate change at that time, and we used that to build our mailing list. And that, I think that's just really important. Fran mentioned it also, that at every event you collect signatures and you tell people that they're signing up for your chapter. It's a way of building your organization, and then you can send out regular mailings. This might seem obvious to some people, but to other people it isn't, to send out regular mailings to keep people interested in your organization. We also started a Facebook page where we could post things. Generally, we post things that have to do with what we are doing, but also what other organizations that we collaborate with are doing. And in New York City, there are a lot of those events. So we kind of limit it to events that have to do with Advocacy, the environment, climate change, care for creation, eco-spirituality, and sustainable development. And I just want to mention here just a little thing that I've gotten from going to different conferences here about sustainable development, and always trying to include care for the poor with care for creation, because the people that are facing climate change right now in the United States, I would say at least, there's this feeling that some people are more concerned about the environment, the polar bear, than they are about human beings. And so there's kind of this tension between the climate and environment movement and the environmental justice movement, which comes mostly from the people that are in the frontline communities and being affected by environmental degradation around them already. So the other thing that we created, well, I would say the other thing that helped us come together as a chapter was to have regular meetings, and that was either face-to-face, which is not very often, but we try to do it at least twice a year, but we also have monthly conference call meetings with free conference call, which is a good service, doesn't cost you a penny, and it really helps to have a set time when you do that every month. We do organize our own events as Metro New York Catholic Climate Movement. We are a big geographical spread. I mean, there are people north of the city that have a whole network of parishes that also focus on environmental concerns and Laudato Si. And then there are all these parishes in the city, all the way to Brooklyn. So each parish might have their own environmental or Laudato Si event, and it doesn't mean that everybody is able to go to it. And that's okay. We just consider ourselves, in one sense, a network, so that people don't feel like they're just doing this on their own, and they don't get discouraged because they feel like, oh, we're just such a small group here, it's not going to make a difference. When you start seeing and knowing about what is going on in all the different parishes, then you feel really gratified that, oh, our work does mean something, and we are connected to a bigger movement here. So we have, let's see, we did a series, some of us were involved in this, within what we call the deanery. I don't know if everybody has a deanery, but our diocese is divided into deaneries, which is a cluster of parishes that have regular meetings. And the deanery where my parish is decided to do a whole series on Laudato Si, taking one chapter at a time. And the workshops moved from parish to parish within the deanery. And out of that, we got more people interested in the Metro New York Catholic climate movement. And we had a couple of more people join our coordinating team. So that we're now actually 9 people on our coordinating team. What else? I'll go on to the different focuses that people have. I mean, we have pipelines coming into the city from all over the place, and so there are prayer vigils to try to stop the pipelines. There's one pipeline that is coming right next to Indian Point nuclear plant, which is a failing nuclear plant that's scheduled to be closed, but this pipeline is coming right next to it. We've also focused on water. Sister Carol DeAngelo, who's also on the webinar, is very active in the coordinating of the organization called Religious Organizations Along the River, where congregations of men and women belong to this organization and work on the protection of water in many different ways. We've had a film series that was coordinated by 2 parishes. Like Fran said, those are good educationals. We showed The Wisdom to Survive, The Last Mountain, which is on mountaintop removal, which was a real eye-opener for people. Blue Gold, which is on how precious fresh water is becoming. And then the last one was Time to Choose. We've also participated in the Mercy to Earth campaign. A couple of the parishes are involved in a community shared agricultural organization called Harmony Farms, and get food from that farm, and went to visit it as well. And the food gets distributed to people in the parishes. We participated in the Clean Energy March last July, I think it was, in Philadelphia, and we had a Catholic bus going to the People's Climate March in Washington, D.C. just recently. We were very proud of that. We realized that not everybody's ready to go from the pew to walking in a march, you know, that it's kind of a scary thing for some people, but we try to say that we're praying with our feet. And we actually did have a prayer service on our way down to Washington, D.C. on our bus. We try to say that as Catholics, we need to raise our voice and our concern about our environment and the policies that are being carried out. Okay, so the organizations that we coordinate with are Interfaith Power and Light. Should I stop?
Well, yeah, I was actually going to ask, we're coming up on time, so if you're able to read them quickly, that's okay, but otherwise I'm going to ask if there's any last questions. So So I see one in the chat box. What do I have to do to start a GCCM in Independence, Missouri? I think I'll ask if Fran and Nancy have any tips. Vince, I'd be happy to speak with you individually, but also, so feel free to reach out, and if I have your email through the webinar, I can get in touch with you. But I think that what Fran and Nancy have shared has been some really good tips about trying to find a couple other people who are interested in this, and looking for a key opportunity to gain others. So whether that's something that's going on, an event that you can tag onto on the parish, or trying to start a study group or another event that you could host at your parish that you could invite others to bring in some like-minded people, that's probably a good opportunity to see who's interested and get a steering committee together. So starting with a couple people to help you out, and then using something like that to get some sign-on sheets. Are there any other tips from the...
I think that you could try to identify if there's a Peace and Justice Committee or Peace and Justice and Care for Creation Committee already existing in the church, and coordinate with them. Get something going as a subcommittee maybe within that committee. It doesn't take a lot of people to get it going. You know, it takes energy to keep it going.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I'll also say that there's, I think one of the things that I've learned from working with GCCM, and even before with some of my work in organizing, that there's a lot that we can do as lay leaders as well. So sometimes a lot, you know, if there's something going on at the diocese that we can tag into, we should coordinate and partner. And if there's not, sometimes it's just because it's, you know, it's an overworked staff that doesn't have the time. And if you're willing to take it and run to it, they're going to be really happy that someone's doing that work. So there's kind of a couple different models there, but I'll definitely be in touch. So thank you. We're at time, but are there any other questions from the group? All right.
Marissa, there's I don't know if you saw the few in the question and answer.
No, I didn't. Are you able to pull those up?
Yeah, because I think this one that might just be relevant. It says, are your GCCM chapters officially recognized or supported by your diocese or bishop, or are you standalone groups that work within the diocese?
I think for us, we have met with the Archdiocese here in New York, with certain people that are involved in the social justice areas, and they've been supportive. They don't necessarily help us with events. I really feel like it's up to the lay people to make this movement grow. I think it really helps if you have a supportive parish priest who will help with bulletin announcements and pulpit announcements for your events, and give you space to do events. I think that's critical.
Great.
So I have to say that I would agree with Nancy that this is a real lay-led movement for the most part. Now, I know that there are many Franciscans involved in this as well, but this is an area where you can really take the lead. So I'd encourage everyone to do that. If you are interested in starting a chapter, maybe Christina, you could say something about whether you would like to hear about this as a representative of GCCM. Is there any kind of a application or anything? I'm not sure.
So there's not an application system. We have a chapter template, which we'll be sharing with some of the resources tomorrow, that really just summarizes some of the things that you both have talked about getting a steering committee together, making sure that you have a mailing list, you know, how to stay in touch with who's there, to give people some tips on how to get started. And over the next couple months, we'll be working on a more comprehensive chapter and outreach guide for anyone. In the meantime, if you're interested, definitely let us know. I joined GCCM about a month and a half ago, for those of you that don't know, but I have a lot of experience with setting up parish organizations and worked for a diocese for a while with the Peace and Justice Commission. So I'm very excited and glad to be a resource on helping to set up GCCM teams, connect with other green resources as well for anyone who's interested. And I'll type my email into the chat box as well.
I must say that the GCCM website is a wonderful resource. And when we were collecting the petition, it was just wonderful to see the pictures of people collecting petition signatures in other places of the world.
Great, thank you. All right, are there any other cute questions that we need to pull up, Christina? Because you can see the Q&A.
Just a question if there's a GCCM group in Atlanta. So right now we don't have one. We'd love to.
Yeah.
But as Fran mentioned, I know that the Boston group is trying to connect with the group that developed the Atlanta Archdiocese plan. So if there's a chapter that can kind of form around that and then help all of us, that would be great.
And someone asked if this is going to be shared for after, and I'm just typing in the chat box that yes, we'll be sending some additional resources and the recording around after to everyone who registered for the webinar for you to share that. So, all right, well, I know we're a little bit over time, so I'm going to close, but thank you everybody for joining. I want to especially thank our panelists for joining and sharing their expertise with us tonight. I really appreciate you joining us. And for everyone who took time out of your own busy schedules to join our webinar, we appreciate that as well, and your time as volunteers. And I hope that I will be speaking with some of you very soon about how to start organizing within your own communities. So thank you again. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.